Welcome to Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones. We have an amazing episode for you today, guys. One of the best. And when I say that, and I like to think we put out a lot of great episodes, and you know it's a special one. Before we get to today's guest, I want to say a big thank you to Combat Comb Over for sponsoring the podcast. They are our friends over on the other side of the Atlantic. Welcome, all you guys that are listening from America. I know, I think it's about a third of our audience is over in America. So welcome, guys. Welcome, American brothers and sisters and colonial cousins. Combat Comb Over, great dudes. They make this podcast possible. They don't even ask anything in return, aside from maybe you could go and give them a follow. Go and give them a follow over at Combat Comb Over. Just follow them. That's it, guys. They're not trying to flog you anything, right? They just want you to go over and give them a follow. They got good posts. They're good people. And I would really appreciate it if you did that, because at the end of the day, they are making this podcast possible. And I know that you are going to enjoy this episode. Today's episode is also brought to you by Sexiest Man in NATO, Geraint Jones. I have a new book out. It's called Lost in the Fire. Thank you guys who have already read it, who have already left Amazon reviews. I won't go too much into the details, guys. Basically, it's a murder mystery. It's set in Las Vegas. I probably don't need to go more into it. You know me by now, so you know the kind of stuff that I'm going to be putting in there. Thank you so much to everyone that backed the Kickstarter campaign to get that going. Thank you so much to everyone that's bought signed copies. If you're interested in a signed copy, just slide into my DMs. You can get it from me on there, on my DMs on Veteran State of Mind or at GRJ Books. Or it's on Amazon. It's on Kindle, it's on Amazon, and we are working on an audiobook. And on the subject of audiobook, I know we have some fans here of my Roman series. We are getting very, very close to putting out the audiobook of Legion. We just, it's been recorded. It's just in the editing phase right now. So stand by for some people getting stabbed in the face. All right, today's guest, John Stryker Meyer, is an American author and U.S. Army Special Forces combat veteran of service in covert reconnaissance with the Studies and Observations Groups, also known as MACV-SOG. These are the guys who got it done in Vietnam. These are the guys who, if you've ever read a Tom Clancy novel or any of these novels where there was some hardcore dude who used to go on deniable ops into Cambodia and into Laos against insane odds. I'm talking section strength against literally thousands of the enemy. That is what John did. His stories are absolutely mental. You've probably heard him on Jocko Podcast. He's been on Jocko Podcast 4 times, which tells you something. Actually, I think it might be 5th now, 5 times. I think he's just done another one. John's an absolute legend of a bloke. I had so much fun recording this podcast. He's a funny guy. He's got a great sense of humour. He's been through so much. His stories are just absolutely mental. And I'm glad to let you know that he is coming on for part 2 as well. We're going to do another episode. I hope we do another one after that too, because I tell you what, he's not going to run out of stories. It's got to be one of the most experienced guys in the world. And what's crazy is he says during this podcast as well that there's some people that he served with have way more stories than him, and it's just incredible. So let's waste no more time. Let's get into this. Give a very warm welcome to Mr. John Stryker Meyer. John, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You have one of the most interesting stories that I've ever heard out of any warrior from any war. I came across you like a lot of people have on the Jocko podcast. And it was one of those. I mean, obviously it's Jocko, so you know, we all know Jocko. He's not going to be. He wouldn't have anybody on and was talking bullshit. So I knew every bit of it was legitimate, and I was like, I can't believe these stories that I'm hearing. This guy's stories are incredible.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and it was fun because at one point during the first Jocko, because I've done 4 with Jocko, 3 for mine, and then we did one with the Frenchman, and. There's points and times where at some point Jocko will go, really? You wait a minute, you didn't what? and to see Jocko, who he's seen the elephant, he's seen hard combat in Ramadi, and when he does that, then it's kind of like, well, maybe this is a little different.
Yeah, I mean, it is different. Like, I was just so I was talking to Peter, and we always have a little chat. Peter's our producer, for people who don't know. We're always just having a little chat before.
Yeah, we just chatted before he connected us with you.
Yeah, and we were just chatting, and he was asking a bit about your background. And I was like, well, like those guys who are in the Tom Clancy novels that Tom Clancy bases his characters off. I'm like, he's one of those guys, and I think that's like for the kind of work that you did, which we'll come on to in a bit, but. That to me is when I read your stuff, I'm like, this is a Tom Clancy character.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's and back then we didn't think about it much. We had a job to do, did it, and then we couldn't talk about it for 20 years.
Yeah. We'll get into all of that, John, but I want to take it back to the very beginning, because we know where you've ended up and we know some of the things you've done. But where did you come from? Where did you grow up, and what was your childhood like?
I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey. My dad was a milkman, so I grew up in the milk truck with him, hustling milk. My mom was a piano teacher, church organist, and so it was straightforward to school, worked on the weekends with dad on the milk truck, and mom was the piano teacher. I could read music before I could read words because it's a lot easier. Music, you only have 7 notes, whereas the alphabet, you got 26, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it got a little complicated when I had to speak English. That's why English is still my foreign language.
Do you play music?
Yeah, yes.
What you play?
Piano and a little saxophone. I haven't played the sax in about 30 years now.
Oh, wow.
But my dad was a musician. He had a sax and a clarinet. So we had the music through high school, junior high, and all that kind of stuff. And then went to college for 2 years, flunked out. When I was working during a summer job, I read the book, The Green Berets. This is 1966 when the war was really heating up. The draft was on. And I said, if I go, I want to go with these guys if I can qualify. The rest is history. I signed up, enlisted, went through basic AIT, went to jump school for 3 weeks, reported for Special Forces, went through. 7 months later, we had the Green Beret. We did some more training for radio teletype because I was a commo geek. And then we went to Vietnam in April of '68, at the end of April '68.
So when you were growing up then on the milk float with your dad, because it's not everybody puts their hand up and says like, I'm going to go and be a Green Beret. So what were you kind of like? What were the qualities that you were picking up as a kid then from your parents?
Well, it was more, it was work, hard work ethic, honesty, and we went to church every weekend, and had that kind of a solid background. And then after I flunked out of college, I was just, I wasn't sure really what I really wanted to do at college. And I knew I was going to get drafted. I read the book, and I said, you know what, if I can qualify for these guys, I'll get more training, and I'll go with the Vietnam. By that time, the Green Berets were recognized as a really independent force multiplier. And it wasn't traditional Army. And I liked that.
Yeah.
So I said, if I can make it, well, son of a gun. I got the beret, and then had to clean up my act a little bit. Just had to be respectful of the beret and what our heritage was and try to build on that.
Were you quite a fit kid?
Oh, yeah. We played sports all the time. Yeah. Every day.
What kind of sports?
Well, baseball, our version of football, which is not your version of football,
I like yours better.
Yeah. And we played soccer, but I stunk at soccer. I just was not that good. We had a lot of people that came to Trenton from Hungary, Czechoslovakia, particularly during the 50s when Russia was just raising hell in Europe. And they all escaped, but they could play soccer. Whereas me, I stunk up the stadium. So I just enjoyed baseball.
Well, I got to ask as well, because I know you play a little football. And you're from New Jersey. Are you a Jets fan?
No. 1 year I was a Jets fan, 1969, for Willie Joe, when he won the first Super Bowl and beat the Colts.
Because I know being a Jets fan is, I ask because I know one of my best friends who will be listening to this is he's from Jersey and was a lifelong Jets fan but couldn't take the pain anymore, so he had to to convert away from it. So when you were at college, then you had this, because a lot of our listeners might not know, about the draft, and they might not know what was going on at the time. So, unlike the war on terror now, when everybody's a volunteer, that wasn't the case then when you were in college. People were getting told to go from Civilian Street.
Right. They had a draft that was in place at the time, and that's a good way of putting it. They're from Civilian Street. So they would get 8 weeks of basic training, 8 weeks of advanced infantry training, have a month R&R, and they'd be sent to Vietnam. And I knew that I needed more training than just basic and AIT. And so that opportunity came up with Special Forces, and it was just a match made in heaven for me. I made it through, and really looked forward to it. I was going to stay in a long time because I really enjoyed the men. There's a traditional bullshit that goes around when you're in the military, but once we landed in Vietnam, we had our in-country training. At the end of the in-country training, the little guy comes out and goes, "We're looking for volunteers." And so Johnny McIntyre, my buddy, goes, "For what, Sarge?" He goes, "Can't say. Either you're in or you're out." And so we volunteered, and that was our introduction to MACV-SOG. The next day, we were up in Da Nang getting the briefing, the top secret briefing.
What's MACV-SOG stand for?
At that time, it's the Military Assistance Command, Vietnam Studies and Observations Group. And they had that innocuous term at the end because they had to hide the secret war in the Navy budget. Previously, in the early days, they called it the Special Operations Group. Well, any reporter going through a budget will see that and go, "Oh man, what's that?" But when the reporters came to Studies and Observations, they go, "Boring, give me the good stuff." And it worked.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a good tactic for any reporter out there now. Go and look in budgets and look for the most boring, sounding names. You'll probably come up with some interesting stuff. Do you think you would have been in the military if it hadn't been for, like, let's say Vietnam wasn't going on when you were at college? Do you think you still would have gravitated towards the military if it hadn't been for Vietnam?
That's a good question, because when I grew up, I always wanted to be in the Air Force. I wanted to fly jets. Right. But my eyes, I had a vision issue that couldn't get me past the first recruiter from the Air Force. So that's a good question. I don't know. Because when I got out, after I flunked out of college, I was definitely like, I couldn't quite decide what I wanted to do. And then the Army thing came along. So I'm not sure. That's a good question. I can't give you an honest answer. I was really attracted to the Air Force. When I was a kid growing up, I knew all the jets that were there, intercontinental ballistic missiles and all that kind of stuff. And I saw all the movies, and all those movies from World War II were like, man, those guys are the soldiers, and the Marines are like, that fighting looks pretty nasty. I think I'll just fly over and drop a couple of bombs on somebody.
What planes were your favorites?
Oh, well, during my year or before that?
Well, let's have both, because I'm a plane geek. I love planes. I wanted to be a pilot too, and ended up in the infantry, so I know where you're coming from.
Well, you gotta love the Corsairs, just the way they look. They look so aggressive, And then the P-51 and the I always liked the B-17. And we had some friends of mine whose dads were either pilots or crew members during World War II. So you talk to those guys, and they're just heroic, just brave beyond description, and the men we all looked up to.
Did you meet a lot of World War II veterans then growing up?
Yeah, at our church we had a bunch of them, and they were either World War II or Korean War, okay. And so there was never much back and forth until they knew I was going in. And then they would come by and say, "Hey, if you ever got any questions, ask." Well, I'd never had any questions because most of the time I was at base. But when we came home, the other veterans would come up and always say, "Hey, welcome home."
Yeah.
It was just nice, So we had that contact always.
Was it quite a patriotic kind of upbringing that you had? Like, were you taught about like duty to country and that kind of thing?
Oh, clearly. Yeah, that's like what America is all about 50 years ago. Not like today with this the bullshit that's going on in the streets and the riots.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking about it, because obviously, like my I have a lot of American friends, and they're all predominantly military guys, so that's how they think. But so it's very like
Yeah.
I know, like, so most of our audience listening are in Britain, and like, because we've always grown up thinking that Americans like are very like, you pledge allegiance to the flag, you're very patriotic, you have bumper stickers, and like you let everyone, when you go on vacation, you let everyone know that you're American. So it's been very weird this last 6 months.
Yeah.
To see this and to see that that's not the case everywhere now. It's been really weird, and I'd love to talk to you more about that later. But like, let's get into Vietnam now, because this is the kind of the crucible, I suppose, where you were made from a young man to a man. Is that kind of fair to say?
Very fair. Yeah, I came home a better man than when I got there.
When you got out there, what was kind of going through your head? Was this like a big adventure that you were? Did it have that kind of feeling of a big adventure?
Well, yeah, it's an adventure with fear and loathing attached, because by that time, so I get there in Vietnam at the end of April '68. The serious war had been going on for over 3 years. You had the Ai Drang Valley, which was November of '65, when our first conventional units landed and did combat with the North Vietnamese army. And that was the first major battle. And from that point on, it carried on with amazing combat. And of course, this guerrilla warfare at its worst. Viet Cong hitting tactics when they want. They fight when they want, not when you want. And so we knew that we're engaged with an enemy who was dedicated to the cause. And so, yeah, it was, when we landed, it's like, I'll never forget it. When the door opened, I was like one of the first people to go out the door. And it was so hot and so humid. It felt like I was getting ready to pull my knife out just to cut a hole in the humidity to walk through it. And of course, you could smell. And the smell, because the airport was near fields, and of course the Vietnamese, they all have their personal defecations in the fields. They fertilize their own fields with their own poop, and it smells.
Yeah,
it was like culture shock. And then when we had gone through like advanced infantry training, they tell you everybody could be the enemy. So I get off the plane, everybody with a cone hat, anybody that's not American, I'm like, okay, you could be a bad guy. And it's like, I'm overreacting a little, but that's the way you do your little mental checklist,
Yeah.
Get in country. Then we had our in-country training. Then the SF guys were like, hey, there's good guys, there's bad guys. This is the way you discern. And when you train with little people, we call them affectionately our little people. Yeah. Now you're still careful until you really trust them. And you got to earn their trust. It's like a two-way street,
Mm.
So that's what happened. So when we volunteered for SOG, we had the briefing, and then when I got on the team, I had to earn the little people's respect too, because they've been like on our recon team, several of the guys have been fighting, running missions for SOG for over 2 years.
So SOG is sorry if I got this wrong. SOG is the guys that they told you. They were the ones that you went to when they said volunteer, but we can't tell you what it's about.
Right.
So that's when you went there, and that happened right at the beginning of your deployment.
Yeah, we had the in-country training. At the end of it, we volunteered, went up for the top secret briefing, and we've been in training for over 14 months. So like me, McIntyre, Rick Howard, and the guys, we all go into this room. It's all the shades are down. And there's a big board with a cover over it. And first thing we do, we pour our pads and pens out. We're ready to take more notes. And the sergeant major comes in and says, put that shit away. This is a top secret briefing. Welcome to the secret war. And then he said it, like, in front of you is a document. Either you sign it where you promise never to talk about what we're doing here for 20 years. You can't tell your girlfriend, your mother, blah, 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 and all that. So we signed it. Then he pulled the cover off, which was a map. And there's South Vietnam with just the name of the cities. But Laos and Cambodia had 10 by 10 blocks. Each was a target. and they had their own target designator. So this is the secret war. This is what we're here about.
So those targets, are those the area of operations, are they?
Yes.
Okay. So had you heard rumors about this stuff when you were going through that 14 months of training? Had you heard rumors about this secret war and what was kind of going on there?
Only bare bones, just that it was really dangerous. The casualty rate was high. Stay away from it.
So what made you ignore that advice? What made you put your hand up?
Well, there are several things. First of all, we had been in training for so long, and we were Green Berets. So if there's something that's top secret, we want to taste it, just see what the heck it is, because this is our war. And of course, 1968, the movie, The Green Berets, had come out with John Wayne. What would the Duke do? He put his hand up right away.
The Duke. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a long way to go and then to not put your hand up, I suppose, isn't it? Like, if you've already... Because I've heard you use the term triple volunteer before. Can you explain to people what that is?
Yeah, you volunteer to get into the Army. You volunteer for airborne. And then we volunteer for special forces. And then once you're in special forces, actually, I guess you could say it's a quadruple. But once we got to NOM, we volunteered for SOG.
So you were making a habit of volunteering because people, which goes against a lot of military people will say never volunteer, but that's where you'll find the interesting shit going on.
Well, you can identify with being young and dumb, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I volunteered for I volunteered for Iraq, I volunteered for Afghanistan. I tried to stay on in both of them. I know exactly where you like young, dumb, and fucking. Well, I'm not going to finish the last bit of that sentence because we do have young listeners.
Oh yeah.
But what was your kind of like the friends that you grew up with? When you're getting to this point where you've been through college and you're doing Green Beret training. What are your friends from home kind of saying? Are they like, John, what the hell are you doing? Or like, what was that kind of like with your friend group?
My very best friends, one went to the Navy and he was in the Navy Reserve for 4 years. Another buddy went to the National Guard. Back then, the National Guard did not deploy.
Right.
And so he got into that. And two other buddies went to the Air Force. And I never saw them again. They left Trenton and never came back. They went on with their lives. And I don't know even what they did. I just know that they went to the Air Force.
Right.
So, we never had commo or anything with any of my buddies because the only commo I had would be from my family, basically, because we were just so busy and didn't have a lot of commo with the outside world other than letters from home. And they would come in. It was slow getting mail from Trenton, New Jersey, to Vietnam.
So tell us about your new group of friends then, the Band of Brothers, as it were.
Well, don't forget the introduction to the Secret War was harsh. Johnny McIntyre and I, we flew up they had the South Vietnamese Air Force, which had the old H-34 Sikorskys. And they had the old rotary engine from the B-17s.
Wow.
And it was a 9-cylinder engine. And we grew to love the aircraft because it could take more hits than the Huey could. So we're flying up. As we get in the helicopter, I could see the door gunner like smiling because he could tell we're green beret, just as green as grass, right? So we're flying up Highway 1, and then all of a sudden the helicopter pilot literally just got the helicopter and flipped it on its side to do a turn. So we're sitting across from the door. I mean, I was anticipating something because I saw the guy talking into his microphone, smiling, right? So sure enough, we go from flying straight up to 90 degrees, face down, seeing Highway 1 as they did a turn. And McIntyre and John Hutchins, my other guy with me, they're like, Jesus, what's going on? They're like, and then the door gunner goes, but the South Vietnamese Air Force, those guys, the code name was King Bees. The majority of them were just outstanding pilots, fearless. They had blood in their veins. And when we landed, we get off the helicopter, and a recon team gets on, and they disappear forever. To this day, the two Americans, Glenn Lane and Robert Owen, are still amongst the 50 Green Berets that are MIA in Laos and Cambodia to this day. And they're part of the 1,586 Americans that are still listed as missing in action from the Vietnam War in Southeast Asia. So that was our introduction. And then within a few days, we learned about how many recon teams have been either wiped out or everybody was killed but one, and two different teams. Like one team, everybody was killed except the team leader. He escaped and evaded and came back to camp. And he had that, you hear about the 10-mile look. His was a 50-mile look because he was able to escape and evade and live to talk about it. We knew that it was a deadly operation and there had been severe casualties. Several teams have been wiped out.
Yeah, that must have been for you going in as a young guy. I mean, obviously you had some idea of what you're going into, but talk about a kind of wake-up call, if you needed one, of that team not coming back in. It sounds like, is it fair to say that if things went bad when you were on one of those missions, they went really bad?
That's very fair to say that, yes.
Yeah. Because it's like you guys are working in small teams, you're working across the fence, as you call it. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but how far are you talking about? How far are you operating from friendly units, from friendly air cover?
Well, depending on the weather and the reaction time, we would always get air support. That's one thing we had, which was the best Air Force in the world. And then we had gunships we had Marine Corps gunships that were attached to our unit. We had other units that had conventional helicopter gunships that were very effective. And then later Cobra gunships. So, but we had no support and no conventional forces could come across to relieve us if we ever got into an engagement. We were on our own. It was us and the Air Force and then the air crews that would come in to pick us up.
And then you're working along. I imagine you're working quite close to the border, are you? Because I guess they didn't want to put their routes too far deep in those countries.
Well, we did. We went at least, I think it was 20 kilometers, 20 or 30 kilometers in, depending on the target, because it would be, everything from trying to figure out what was coming down the roads, because the Ho Chi Minh Trail was the main complex that came from North Vietnam south through Laos, through Cambodia. Then there'd be trails that would go into Vietnam. Our job was to first on the trail to see what was coming down, monitor it, give intel reports. Then if we could call in airstrikes on any obvious, like truck convoys, do a wiretap, POW snatch. And then later on, by the end of 1968, there were reports of enemy fuel lines that were coming down through the DMZ, through Laos. And we had to go find them. If we found them, the mission was to blow them up.
So we're talking about behind enemy lines, but also like this is where they were funneling their troops down to go fight in the south, right? So you could be, so you're not just talking about these are a few guys, like there's a few guys defending these routes, that you could come across entire battalions.
Oh, sure. They had in early 1968, they had between 25 to 35,000 North Vietnamese soldiers in Laos. And in Cambodia, anywhere from 40 to 100,000. And they would mass, come across the border, attack, and then go back and lick their wounds. Because our conventional units could not go pursue them into Cambodia or Laos.
How do you feel about that? About those kind of rules?
Well, the rules of engagement that just show you why politicians shouldn't be involved. If you're going to have a war like World War II, it's all, win it all. Don't go in there with your hands tied. And you know about rules of engagement from your ear, which are even worse than what we were up against.
It's like your hands tied behind your back and your fucking eyes covered. It's crazy. Like I don't see how someone thinks you can go and fight a war and then have a different set of rules to the people you're fighting against. I can only imagine how frustrating that must have been there. While we're on the subject of things that were frustrating, did being in the unit that you're in, I mean, you were in one of the most kind of like hardcore units, specialist units in Vietnam, if not the most. Did that get you out of bullshit tasks like sandbag filling? No, because there was always a lot of rain. We had the monsoon season, so when it came, you had to be out filling sandbags like everybody else, because you couldn't go on a mission. The aircraft couldn't get into a target,
And if you did, you wouldn't have TAC air because, you just can't direct jets and sky raiders in storms. They just can't see where they're going. And there, sometimes during the monsoons, it rained horizontally because the monsoons, it was serious rain.
It sounds like a hard place to be, regardless of the fact that there's a war going on. In terms of the humidity and the conditions you were living in. Can you tell us a bit about what those kind of like, enemy aside, what are the kind of things that you're dealing with out there with the jungle and and just life in general?
My first base was FOB-1 at Phu-Bai, which is up in I Corps. Vietnam was divided into 4 corps. I Corps went right up to the DMZ. So you had North Vietnam, I Corps 2, 3, and 4. So we were in I Corps, both of my tours of duty, and we would go across the fence into Laos or Nickel Steel, which was North Vietnam. And so the country, when you're flying over, it's a beautiful country, even when you saw the pockmarks from artillery rounds and things. And it was humid. It was hot. The people had different times, a different way of living, and they had POC time. So every afternoon, because it was so hot, everybody would just basically stop,
right?
And they would take a few hours off, like a siesta in Mexico. The same thing, okay. But they called it POC time there because of the heat, the humidity, and but it's like when you take the time to get to know the people, and we were blessed. I had a great interpreter. Because I had a tin ear, I just couldn't pick up Vietnamese other than how to curse and to Didi Mal, like get the heck out of here, run, But the people, once you get past the politicians and the lawyers, I enjoyed the people on my team. I got to know them really well, and then we would meet people downtown. When we go do a patrol, we usually go downtown for lunch or something like that. Either the local little establishment, and the people were wonderful. Some of our guys didn't like him, but I liked him, and of course the guys on our team, we just became super close.
So it's crazy for me, like as an Iraq and Afghanistan veteran, or for any Iraq and Afghanistan veterans listening, the idea of being able to go into a town and have like a meal there is like, wow, it's mind blowing. But so how did that work? You did you go like, were you armed or like
fully armed? And it would be like it was like a little small town, a Fulong. Sometimes you couldn't even tell where the restaurants were until our people knew where to go. So there'd be like one little building, you go in the back, there'd be a couple of tables, and we go in, take it over. And then our Vietnamese would order the food. And sometimes they'd order stuff for us. We always called it mystery meat because you never knew what the heck you're really eating. My favorite meal was the time they had me eating cow eyes, but I didn't realize it.
How was it? Chewy.
Chewy. Yeah.
It's just so crazy to try and get my head around this idea of like going out on patrol and being able to use a cafe or something. But it sounds great because you get like you'd see this because otherwise I think it's like you can get in that place of just like if you're just rolling out missions and you only ever see people shooting at you, you never get to know because at the end of the day you were there for the South Vietnamese people, right?
And the people that we dealt with, at least the ones we knew. We did a lot of that in my first tour, like my first 7 months at FOB-1, particularly in the early months, like my first 2 or 3 months, because we were still at the end of Tet, and they had a mini Tet a little bit later in 68. And so we would do ambushes at night, and our team would tell the locals, we're going to have an ambush tonight. So after 10 o'clock, don't go outside, because if you do, you're going to die. And we don't want to hurt our good guys. We want to kill the communists. And the villagers would go, hey, good luck. Kill some commies. Because they didn't like him either. But they could never say that to the communists because the communists would come back and kill them.
Yeah, I was going to say it's that they don't tolerate that kind of dissent, is it? It's something I suppose we got as similar in the conflicts now. Is that it's like, we're operating on one set of rules, and there's some rules I do think we should abide by not deliberately killing civilians. But then our enemies of not, like, that's not something that they go along with. And so what was while we're on the subject of the enemy, What was your opinion of the enemy going into Vietnam, and then how did that change, if it did change over time, and like how is it now?
Well, it never changed really, because particularly we were going through special forces training. Advanced infantry, the soldiers there were all combat vets. So they told you, look, you're coming up against guerrillas and now North Vietnamese army. When they want to fight, they fight, and be ready for a fight. This is not Mickey Mouse. And so in our minds, and then in special forces training, even in country, we had a more detailed training about some tactics, what they would do, how to always be alert, even in your base camp, because we had some of our camps that had been attacked by Viet Cong that infiltrated. So you're always on your toes for that. The only thing we knew was that everything we were told was right, was true, and that they were tenacious beyond belief. And they kept coming. I mean, there were times when our recon teams would literally stack up. We killed so many people, they would stack up the bodies. Like Lynn Black, one of the chapters in Across the Fence, chapter 6, Lynn Black's team had killed so many people, they piled up the dead bodies to use that as a bulwark. So the next time there was a full wave attack, they could hide behind the dead bodies for protection. And an enemy like that keeps coming, and you're killing them, it's really impressive.
So you respect them?
Absolutely.
Do you think that respect is something that is necessary to have it's necessary to have that of your enemy? If you ever want to win a war, that you have to be respectful of your enemy and their capability? Absolutely.
If you don't, it's going to lead to being careless, and it could cost you or your men some lives.
Yeah, I feel like it's something where I think that sometimes you see people becoming too derogatory towards the enemy, and I understand that, we need to dehumanize the enemy to a certain extent because our job is to kill them.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, it's like once you cross that once you pass the line of dehumanization into just kind of like, not respecting their capabilities, and that can be very, very dangerous for people. I've heard you mention as well that the enemy would use drugs, and that the Colt 45 was it that was developed to kind of put people down. What was that?
Well, the 45 was developed for the Philippine campaign in the 1906 and 1908. They needed a handgun that could stop troops that are drugged, and that's why they developed the 45, the Colt 45, the 1911 model. And that's what it was designed for, because that 45 caliber round stops them. If they're on drugs or not, they will be stopped because of the impact of that round. And with some of our guys came up against troops that appeared to be on meth. They were high, crystal meth, or something like some kind of a variation of amphetamines. They'd be pumped up on them. Because we had guys that would shoot them 2 or 3 times, and they would keep coming. And that's like superhuman conduct, because they are high. But they're the enemy nonetheless, and they can still kill you.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when you see the videos of police shootings, and people are like, well, why couldn't they just tase them? It's like, well, because they're on meth, you don't stop. Those people don't stop. You can put round after round into someone. Oh
yeah.
Well, again, it's something. Again, this is something that happens a lot, and I don't think a lot of civilians realize just how often the enemy is high on something. How about American troops? Because it's something that obviously, like in popular culture, has been talked about a lot with American troops in Vietnam. What did you see any drug use over there? What was the kind of your experience of that?
Well, I mean, you had the local population had a different opinion about drugs, and particularly marijuana. And they had marijuana that was a lot stronger that came in from Cambodia. So yeah, it was prevalent. Even some of our guys would use it, and the conventional army had a lot more troubles with it than we did. Like in our case, you might have somebody would smoke a joint at night, but in the morning they'd be at formation, just like the guys who drank too much. They would drink too much.
Right.
But when it's time to go on a mission or you had to go out for your training, you did it. And it wasn't like conventional units where later in the war, by 69 and 70, you had conventional units that were the troops were rebelling against their commanders. And again, that was conventional army. So we never had that. But even the Vietnamese on our team, we had a couple of young guys at guard duty. When we had guard duty at night, they would say, "Hey, can we light up?" Well, yeah, if you want to go smoke your joint, go light up because it's quiet. And we knew if the shit hit the fan, they would do the appropriate thing, and they'd be there with us.
But so like you mentioned drink there as well. So like was drink pretty readily available?
Oh yeah, I mean I mean some of our guys clearly drank too much. To this day, I don't know how they even got up in the morning, let alone go run a mission. But they did.
So was that something? Did you have to pay for that kind of stuff, or was it just part of like your rations?
No, we had a club, and you paid for it, but it was always discounted rates and everything. It wasn't like you're going to go broke at the club drinking.
Yeah, and you could you go into town and get a drink as well? Were you like, is it? So you say food buy? Could you go into those places and
they had the biggest city for us was Hue, Hue. It's 10 miles north of Fubai. So they had more of a cosmopolitan area, but they were just recovering from the Tet offensive, where the Marines and the Army had been in there fighting the NVA for over a month and a half before they finally removed them from Hue, and a lot of damage. But they had restaurants and bars there. Yeah, you could go in and get a beer or whatever you wanted, but you had to pay for it. It was MPC or piastres, their money, their currency.
So one of the ones, John, as well as mentioned in the book, is when you got there, you were kind of shocked to see some women in the building. You guys. So, again, this is something that I just find so hard.
That was our safe house.
Well, okay. So can you just tell us about that then? Who were these women that you found in the house, in the safe house?
Yeah. Well, we had safe houses, several safe houses in Vietnam. So ours was in Da Nang. So a safe house was the security. It was secure. They had security forces that would guard the gates, the back, and anybody who worked there had to be vetted by special forces or the CIA. So the only people they hired were people they could trust. And so, like when we came in the country, we stayed there for a night. You could get food. They had a bar. You could drink. And of course, there were women there. So some of whom were selling their womanly charms for the right price. Johnny McIntyre and I were there. And this is our first exposure. We come into the safe house. So a team, some SF guys that just got back, they were on one of the hatchet forces or one of the Mike force. I forget which one it was, but they had just come back from a mission across the fence where they had to go help one of our teams. And they were talking about the combat, the tenacity of the enemy that came up against, and how many people they killed. And McIntyre and I are sitting there going, oh my God, because we're green as grass, and we're at the safe house. So at some point, I had to go up for a shower. And when I go upstairs, there's a second story, and it's wide. I mean, it's like a big room, a lot of beds, double bunks. So one guy's right there just getting service, another guy's getting it on. I go into the shower. There's one of our sergeants getting a shower, but there's this one gal who's douching out with Coke because she had just got done. So I guess Coca-Cola was a good douche for her after intercourse.
Now you know.
But it was kind of stunning, because I never had taken a shower before with women in it who were just there, just casually cleaning up. It was very casual.
So what was that like then for you? You got raised, you went to church, all that kind of stuff. That must have been a bit of a holy shit moment.
It was. Yeah, that's a perfect way of saying it. WTF?
Yeah. I mean, it just, it's kind of like, there's these aspects of Vietnam. Like I said, a lot of it's from popular culture. So I always wonder how true it is. And I suppose the other part, like we've seen the prostitutes in movies, we've seen the drinking in movies. How about the music side of things? Was because like when I think Vietnam, I'm like the soundtrack. There's this soundtrack that comes to head, like the Stones, CCR. All these guys start popping into your head.
Don't forget the animals.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the animals too.
Yeah.
So was music a bigger part of it as we're led to believe when we see these movies? Was it like was it a soundtrack?
And what was funny, like with Special Forces, it was really, we had a very dichotomous musical selection. We had jukebox would have rock and roll, and then there'd be country western. So a lot of the older guys who had been in Special Forces for a while, they were from the South, Texas, or who knows where, but they all liked their country western, which I hated. I couldn't stand it. And so like there'd be days we had our team rooms, right, with the Americans. You walk past one, there'd be Johnny Cash. I walked the line. And then the next room would be the Iron Butterfly. The next room would be Glenn Campbell. As you walk past them, you had this music hitting you as you walk past each room.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it was very rich, diverse musical setup. And of course, you had the Doors. It was that really radical Jefferson Airplane, great rock and roll. And at night, I had a one earplug. I plug it in, put a cassette on, listen to Cream, Disraeli's, the Vanilla Fudge, Procol Harum.
What's it like when you hear those tracks now? Do you get a lot of flashbacks?
Oh, it's like back at Fubai. Yeah, put you right back there. Yeah. And of course, the Animals. The anthem from the Animals was "We got to get out of there.
Yeah.
We got to get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do."
Is that how you felt?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when do you ever deliberately listen to certain tracks to take you back there? Is it something you use as like, you're like, I kind of want to feel like I'm back in Fubai, and is that kind of a thing you do?
Not quite through that mindset. Just some music that was from that era was so rich that I like to hear it just for the sake of the music. And then when you hear it, you go, oh yeah, remember when you listened to that? Because like we closed FOB1 at the end of December of 68, and we went down to Da Nang, to CCN, and we had hooches down there, and I bought a tape deck, and we had the Iron Butterfly, Jimi Hendrix, and sometimes our guys would sneak in the morning where we're still asleep, and they would turn on the stereo, to wake us up, but they're so quiet. And so the Iron Butterfly and the God of Davida, baby. And then Jimi Hendrix, Electric Ladyland. Those are the two I remember getting woken up by, with my South Vietnamese guys would sneak in and jar us awake.
So those are cassette decks and stuff. Are they, I suppose, cassettes back?
That was a reel-to-reel.
Right.
That one
okay.
there.
Okay,
yeah.
Sweet. So I want to kind of backtrack a little bit, because I forgot to ask you something I'm always really interested in. I'm always really interested to know what somebody's first experience under fire was like.
Oh,
so and like that could be mortars, that could be that could be rockets, that could be whatever. But can you remember your first time? Because I mean, you've been under fire a lot, but can you remember your first time?
Oh, the very first time when it was serious. Yeah, it was. The target was Echo 4. We got inserted October 6th of 68. And by the end of the day, we had trackers. We couldn't shake them. So the morning we got up, we moved. And again, we could hear them. We knew the trackers were on us or close to us. And at one point, the team leader, Don Wolken, put us on top of a little knoll. And we were up there. He said, try to make commo. I couldn't make any commo. Nobody would come up. So around 2:00, we're like we had a 6-man team. And I was near the end. We're all sitting down. And what I didn't realize was our counterpart, Sal, who was the Vietnamese team leader on our team, Sal and Hep, the interpreter, were telling the team leader, they're Buku VC here, and we got to be ready. Now, I didn't hear any of that. Come the radio operator, I'm down at the other end, and I just opened up a can of peaches or apricots, and then all hell broke loose. And we were engaged for several hours, and they kept coming up this hill at us. And we stacked up so many bodies that after a while, the NVA were stacking up the dead bodies, trying to get them so they could get enough dead bodies so they could shoot down at us. And we also had at one point, I was facing forward, and Fook, who was our point man, was behind me. He opened fire. So when we're under fire, it just shattered my eardrum. I mean, I couldn't hear for days. I was like really pissed. Like, what the hell is he doing? I assumed he was shooting over my shoulder. Well, the next day, we're back at base. My hearing is still really bad in the right ear then. And I go to Hep. I said, hey, Hep, ask Fook why he was shooting over my shoulder, because my ear, it's number 10. It hurts buku. And Fook told him, he said, you dumbass. Coming up the hill were NVA, you didn't see them. I was killing them.
Oh, shit.
And they would have gotten you. They were like a matter of seconds away from blowing you away. Because I'm focused forward, because I could see the gunfire coming out of the jungle towards us there. And but Fook fortunately looked down the hill, because they're coming up. There was like a little opening that they could come through.
So we're talking 360-degree battlefield then in where you were.
Yeah, on that occasion there would be more like about maybe 180, maybe 200 at the most. They came at us from the side, from the front, up the two sides, and we couldn't get any air support. So it was just us versus them for over 2 hours. And we finally got some air support in. We had A1 Sky Raiders, had napalm runs, gun runs. We had Phantom jets that came in. Helicopter gunships made gun runs. And then at last light, a King Bee came in and hovered about maybe 10, 15 meters away. And we had to get through elephant grass, which is like 10 to 15 feet tall. It took us 10 minutes to get about that distance to the helicopter. But he hovered, waited for us, and then threw the team on. And then we got out. We're down to our last magazine, last hand grenade.
So how much visibility are we talking about here? Because, with that, with elephant grass like that, from your defensive position, like what kind of visibility have you got? And what kind of like distance is the fight?
In that case there, when the firefight started, the jungle was only a few feet in front of us. And they were really close. And so it'd be anywhere from, 10, 12 feet away at the most.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of times you wouldn't even see them, because they would see us first, because they're in the darkness. We're out in a little bit more sunlight. And you knew when the AK opened fire, and you see the green tracers.
Like literally these guys are just popping out the trees and you're just snap shooting at like who's coming out right in front of you.
Yeah. And sometimes they would try to surge. They'd get all in line, and a whole bunch would come out, and it'd be full automatic to blow them back.
So you had a weapon that was fully automatic?
Oh, yeah, Car 15. The Colt Car 15, which was a modified version of the M16, but it was superior. It had a collapsible stock, and the barrel was shorter, so it was more efficient in the jungle for movement. And it was really an outstanding weapon.
And how much kind of ammunition are you taking out on these missions?
600 plus rounds for that.
Wow.
And then we had a M79. We sawed the M79 off, which is a 40 millimeter grenade launcher. And so the Americans carried 10 to 12 rounds for it, and then hand grenades. And then I was a radio operator, so I always carried the radio and the battery for that. And then one of the team members would carry an extra battery just in the event we needed the extra battery.
Did you have any belt-fed weapons?
A couple times we went out with M60s because it was a really hot area. And but the other Americans would carry it, not me.
So how much kind of weight? Well, because you had the comms gear, I guess. So how much weight are we kind of talking about? What you guys were going into the jungle with? Usually,
in my case, it was between 85 and 90 pounds.
And how much did you weigh back then?
About 170 soaking wet.
Yeah. So so to put that into context for people listening, so we're talking about going through thick, dense jungle with a half a man on your back. In the humidity with 40,000 troops, enemy troops around the place. Yeah, then they would force the local indigenous people to look for us or hunt us too. They had dogs, and we were careful. If we ever ran into indigenous people, if they weren't armed, we wouldn't kill them. But the enemy was always not far behind. You knew that. I'm just thinking about the physical effort that it takes to just do that, never mind the fact that there's an enemy out there. I mean, that's a hard slog anyway with that kind of kit and that heat and those conditions.
The jungle was a little cooler, and the vegetation was such that it was so thick that a lot of times when we'd be in triple canopy, because it'd be 3 layers of canopy, it would be up to 150 feet total. And then on the ground, it'd be so dense that if I was behind the point man, or if I was the third man back, I couldn't see the point man. I could only see the back of the man in front of me. It was really thick. And a lot of times, my little people could get through the vines. I wore out pants a lot because I'd be on my knees, had to crawl through a lot of those things where our South Vietnamese could just get through it. But I wore out many a pair of pants crawling in the jungle.
How tall are you, John?
6'2".
Okay, so yeah, you're a bit of a height. That's for me as a Welshman. That's a tall man. We used to go down down the coal mines. So when you're on the patrol, then, like what's kind of going through your head? Because I'm just thinking, like, again, I'm thinking about like this. I'm thinking about how difficult those conditions are. Was your primary kind of focus on, like, damn, there's a lot of enemy out here, I better be on my guard, or was it, Jesus Christ, my fucking pack's heavy? Like, what's kind of going through your mind as you're patrolling?
Well, all of that is a combination, you know. It's kind of like we knew that they were out there, so we were always cautious. We would always move 10 minutes, then pause for 10 minutes, because the jungle had its own life. And when you heard a regular jungle sound, then you'd wait. That's why we did 10 and 10.
Right.
To hear, because when things got quiet, that meant something was wrong. Somebody else was there besides us, and it wasn't animals. It would be man. So we just assumed it would be the enemy. More often than not, it was. So when things got quiet, that's when the pucker factor tightened up.
Yeah, I bet. One of our British Special Forces guests we've had on says, when you're getting good at the jungle, when the animals will, when you start to see more of the animal life. But they had tigers out there, right?
Oh yeah, we there were other units, not Special Forces, but units that had men dragged out of their perimeter by tigers that killed them.
That's absolutely terrifying. Like as if there's not enough out there to.
Yeah, between the tigers and the pit vipers, and then they had a snake that was called the 2-step snake. If it bit you, you had 2 steps and you were dead. The venom was so powerful. And then we also came across. There were several times we heard a tiger walking around our perimeter at night.
Oh my God!
And the morning, one time, the footprint was like this. It was huge. But we had the Car 15 on full automatic. Ain't no tiger going to be getting to us.
What's scarier, tigers or the North Vietnamese army?
It's not fair because the tiger didn't have an AK. We had our Car 15.
Okay.
So yeah,
we'll say tigers with AKs then for that one. How did you feel going out on your first mission? Because like you said, you did a lot of training. You'd volunteered for all these different schools and these different step ups to different, like, these more dangerous jobs. How did it feel the first time you got on that chopper to head out on your first, like, real mission?
Well, this was like, hey, we're here. This is what all this training's about. This is why we're here now. That's why we train. We're psyched. Look, the adrenaline's pumping. Let's get it on. Let's find out what this is really about. And our first 2 missions were very successful. We inserted Air Force sensors along a major trail. One was a road that they could drive trucks and tanks down at night. So we went in broad daylight and put in Air Force sensors. So it basically had a central unit, had coaxial cables that ran out like 20, 30 feet. So we had to bury the cables. And then at the end, each one had a sensor. So that anything that went past, it would send a signal to the Air Force, and it would tell them whether it was vehicles, men, tanks. And we did 2 of them. We did one in the Assault Valley. That was my very first mission, in answer to your question. And again, we went in there loaded for bear. We figured, oh God, if we get out of here alive, we'll be so lucky. Because the Assault Valley was one of our worst targets up in the I Corps. And so we anticipated the worst. Well, The Viet Cong and the NVA fought when they wanted to fight, and we had no combat whatsoever. When we left, one NVA door gunner, not door gunner, but an NVA gunner, opened up with a 50 caliber. Well, we had so much TAC air stacked up, we killed this guy 3 or 4 times.
It's not. It doesn't seem like a clever idea.
Yeah, and then the second time we did the same thing up at Quezon on Highway 9. And that's just a badass area. But again, we were in and out, not a shot fired in anger. So then the mission I just described, which was October 7th, that was Echo 4, and we were in combat for 4 hours before we got pulled down.
So yeah, you made up for the first couple.
Oh yeah.
On that one. But the Ashore Valley, that's the Hamburger Hill place, right? Is that the same kind of?
Yeah, it's huge. It's very long, and different parts of the Ho Chi Minh Trail would feed into it, go through the valley into Vietnam.
When you were out there, John, did you feel like, because were you getting intelligence on what was happening in different areas and what was happening to what unit, or did you guys, apart from like kind of like your war, did you know what was going on in the bigger picture?
Yeah, we had newspapers, news reports, and we always had intel briefing. Anything that might impact us, like when President Johnson decided to halt the bombing in North Vietnam, we weren't happy about that because we knew that their assets that were there would now come south into our AO, and they did. And they had a lot of anti-aircraft, and things really picked up by 69 and the 68, 69. They had a 37 Mike, 23 Mike to go along with the 12.7s. And they even had, later some of our units came up against anti-aircraft ACAC, like World War II, when the Battle of Britain, how they would have the anti-aircraft the ACAC, we called it.
Right, yeah.
They had that there. And the Russians had trained up the North Vietnamese to use that stuff.
Was there Russians? Do you reckon there was Russians in the areas that you were working in, advisors?
Oh, clearly. Russians were there. They had Cubans. They had Chinese that were all there. There's a YouTube thing that came out about 13, 14 years ago where the Russians who fought in the Russian secret war in Vietnam had an anniversary. They got together and they felt bad about the 8 or 9 commies that lost their lives in the secret war in Vietnam. My only regret was there wasn't more of them.
Was it clear that Russia was the puppet master in this, so to speak?
Of course, yeah. And China supported them. All the Eastern Bloc countries, they had their AK-47s and other weapons that were manufactured. Czechoslovakia, Russia, wherever the hell else they made them. They came from different Eastern Bloc countries. And if it wasn't for Russia and then later China supporting them in the way they did, and they had Cuban advisors that went over, and they were there. Our people ran into them one time or another. And in fact, one of our guys spoke Spanish. He came up directly against a couple of Cubans on another in Laos. So they were there supporting the North Vietnamese, because without that support, it would have ended. Because Vietnam just didn't have that kind of industrial base.
So you mean like without the support of arms and ammunition?
Yeah, sure.
All right, guys, give me 2 minutes. Just please listen up to this, because it's important. Because without the Royal British Legion, there is no podcast. And getting this out there to your ears is not the only thing that they do. For instance, right now, they have the virtual field of remembrance. Remember and honour the fallen by leaving a tribute in our virtual field of remembrance. This year, you can virtually plant your tribute from the comfort of your home. This is at britishlegion.org.uk, guys. It's on their homepage. If you go there, just scroll down a little bit, you will see the virtual field of remembrance. Go down there. You can leave a message for a fallen friend. You can leave one for a family member. You can leave one for a stranger. At the end of the day, there's a lot of people out there who have given so much for what we have in this country and in other countries, the freedoms that we hold dear, and we can go on there and remember people. Just because this whole COVID thing is going on does not mean we have any excuse for not remembering those that went before us. So please head over to britishlegion.org.uk. go and leave a message on the virtual field of remembrance, guys. And if you leave one and you want to let us know about it so that we can share it, please send it into @VeteranStateOfMind on social media and we can put that up there. Let's get this going, guys. Let's get this spreading. Not like obviously a lot of people know about the usual kind of celebrations at the cenotaph or services of remembrance at the cenotaph. I say celebration because I do think it is a celebration of people's sacrifice and the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate act of love, in my opinion, for your fellow man. But let's spread the word on this, guys, so that people know. So the virtual field of remembrance, BritishLegion.org.uk. Thanks so much for British Legion supporting this podcast. Let's get back to it, guys. Thanks for listening. So when this you mentioned the bombing of the North, then. So I just want to make sure I got this right for people myself. Is you basically the country was split in two, and below let's say the line in the middle, for the sake of argument, the line in the middle.
It's the DMZ.
So below the DMZ, you've got troops fighting on the ground, and then above it there was an air campaign. But no troops, no American troops, no American boots on the ground. And then they halted the air campaign against these targets in the North.
Right.
What was the reason behind that?
Politicians playing politics, not really letting the generals do what they wanted to do to win the war.
Do you think the North should have been occupied as the South was?
Absolutely. I mean, if we had taken the war to them, they couldn't go south because they had to fight us there. And there's been so much distorted truth on what their capabilities were. I mean, we weren't there to conquer. We were there just opposing the communist forces. And before America got involved, the North Vietnamese had come south and they were supporting the Viet Cong. Whereas the media was always told, oh, it's just the local farmers that are rising up against the imperialist dogs from America. And they're just fighting against the corrupt South Vietnamese government. Well, all the Vietnamese on my team preferred their corrupt government that they knew to communism. And that's why they were putting their lives on the line against the communists. And that's the long and the short of it.
I don't think there's such a thing as government that isn't corrupt anyway. I'm like, show me a government. I'll show you corruption in there somewhere. So yeah,
and blatant stupidity.
Yeah. Well, we're on the subject of blatant stupidity.
Yeah.
How did you get along with young officers?
Well, there were a couple good ones, and the young ones. Fortunately, with our small recon team, the team leader, the 1-0, the code name was 1-0. For a team leader, 1-1 was assistant, 1-2 was the radio operator. Unless the 1-0, like in my case, I would always carry the radio because I wanted to call in the airstrikes to avoid any accidents or, some people had called in ordnance on their own teams. We don't want anything like that. So as a 1-0, we had strict control over who would be on my team. And I never had an officer except for one mission. And we invited one officer on because he was an expert in one of the technologies that we were using at the time.
Right.
So as a 1-0, there were more than once we had a young lieutenant or a captain say, hey, I want to go out with you guys for a mission. I say, I'm sorry, sir, but thank you for volunteering, but I got my team.
So you had a very different experience to the one that people got told about a lot with indigenous troops there.
Correct.
Very positively about the pilots and about the guys that you had on your team. So what was the problem in the rest of the country? Was it bad leadership?
Leadership and again, corruption. I mean, they would have their troops that were getting pulled to get their money, but the officers, the high-ranking officers, would always take their cut out of the salaries.
Fuck.
Some of the regular units were outstanding, like the Marines, some of the airborne units from the ARVN, which is the Army from the Republic of Vietnam. They have some outstanding troops. Look at our people, our little people. All of mine were South Vietnamese. And they were just profoundly fearless. They were all jump qualified. They were all parachutists. And when our team got wiped out, we had to rebuild the team.
Right.
And we hired, 3 of the men we hired were 15 years old.
Jeez.
And so by the time they were trained up, they were 16. And they were stone cold killers in the war. And once we got on the ground.
You kind of been much older than that yourself, right?
When I got in country, I was 22.
Oh, okay. So you were above the average kind of age and stuff out there.
Oh yeah, don't forget it took me 2 years to flunk out of college. Come on now.
Why did you flunk out? Let's get to the bottom of this. What was behind it? Was there a girl?
No, it was just I just had no direction in life.
Okay.
Because when I got into high school, we had a local college. That's all I could afford. Went as a music major, then became a phys ed major, and I just wasn't into it. I was just we parties more, and I had a couple of part-time jobs just to get a little income up, and I just wasn't a serious student. And so when I flunked out, you heard that part of the story. And when after Vietnam, when I came back, I had to make up the courses I failed, get back to get the degree going.
All right. So one of the things that obviously is like so kind of like one of the most dangerous parts for your missions was your insertion, right? Because you're going into areas where the enemy are, obviously. There's a lot of them, and you're exposed in a helicopter. How often were you going in? Oh, and also you mentioned the length of the elephant grass, which makes it dangerous. So just finding the ground is hard work. How often were you? How often were you going into hot landing zones?
Um, if the landing zones were hot, we would leave.
Okay.
The only time if we went in for a bright light was to go in for a down pilot, or if there was a team that had been banged up really bad and we had to go in to rescue them or try to bring them back. It was called a bright light. So a bright light,
Nice.
if you took enemy fire, you would still try to get on the ground to get to the pilot or to get to the team and get them out. Otherwise, if you got fired up, you left. So during November and sometimes in December of '68, we had a period of time when we would go in the morning, get shot out of primary, secondary, and alternate. By then, the helicopters are low on fuel. Go back, have lunch, get a new target, go out, and get shot out again from the primary, secondary, alternate. And on one of those occasions, when we were going into the LZ, I forget if it was Fook or Sal, but they saw a wire.
Oh shit!
Somehow they saw a wire cross the on the LZ, and we were able to get the helicopter pilot to avoid the wire, and we pulled out. Well, that wire had been set up to a 500-pound bomb. So had we hit that tripwire, that would have blown up, just destroyed the entire helicopter.
And are these LZs? Are you having by necessity to use the same ones?
No, they had other LZs. Sometimes it'd be a bomb crater.
Okay.
Sometimes it'd be open areas. Their agriculture was slash and burn. So sometimes the old slash and burn areas would still only have like maybe 8 to 10 feet of growth. So the helicopter would go in and sit down, you'd get out and go into the wood line from there.
And that's 8 to 10 of what, like of the elephant grass, is it?
Right.
Right. So that sounds like a pretty dangerous point just from the fact of finding your feet getting out of the helicopter. Did you guys take many injuries of people jumping too quickly and that kind of thing?
My buddy Johnny McIntyre, his first mission, he had a lieutenant. The lieutenant jumped out too soon, broke an ankle. So the whole mission was compromised. So they come back, pull out the dumb lieutenant, patch him up, and send him home.
So when you had a friend go out on a mission like that, what was it like for you being on base, waiting for your own turn to go out, knowing that you had friends across the fence?
Oh, you worried about them. And we always check in with the comm center to see what the latest was on their commo checks to see how the team was doing. Yeah. And again, it'd be minimal contact. When you're on the ground, we knew they had RDF and radio direction finding equipment, really good. And so we wouldn't talk. Like we had a commo check, a lot of times they would fly over, and Covey, our forward air controller nickname was Covey. They would check in with us, and we just do a click on the handset. That's all. Now, if there was some intel reports we had to give out, then we give them out and to try to make it as concise as possible.
I'm guessing all that equipment that they had for finding you via radio equipment was all Russian as well, right?
Absolutely.
What was harder mentally, going out yourself or seeing your friends go out on missions?
I'd rather be on the ground than have my buddy out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are some of the other What are some of the other challenges that came they're not so obviously the jungle's a challenge, getting shot at's a challenge. What's some of the other things that are the not so obvious things that were hard work about being in Vietnam?
Well, in Vietnam itself, it's just getting by day to day because you were always on alert. You always had guard duty. You had to keep your guard up for the Viet Cong, the local guerrillas, and you never knew when they might hit. I mean, there are times when we had a clubhouse. Somebody climbed on a clubhouse, not once but twice, and they put up a stake so that the mortarmen could aim in on that stake.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah. And another time we saw a guy who was walking, and he was walking funny. And then our heavy weapons guy goes, that's a Viet Cong. What he's doing is marking the steps off. He was counting the footsteps to give an accurate count to their mortarmen.
You know what's so funny, John, is like exactly the same stuff would happen in Iraq. We'd have guys working in Iraq from the city that would come in and then they'd like sneak photos of like the battle damage.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, but I didn't find that out until I was in Iraq. And you guys found that out in Vietnam, and I'm like, well, why? I'm like, why wasn't this passed on to us? And I can only think that time goes by in between wars, and people forget the lessons, and then the same thing, the same lessons get learned again and again. If you see a guy walking funny, he's probably pacing out for the mortars.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, the classic example of that would be in 1970, we had an Operation Tailwind. We had a Green Beret team and 16 Green Berets, 120 indigenous troops on a 4-day mission. They were deep in Laos. They worked Air Force, Marine Corps, Army, Air, TAC Air. And 9 years later now, after the Vietnam War, when they had that debacle in the desert, when they tried to go in for the hostages, and the helicopters couldn't even talk to each other. It was just crazy. And this is like 9 years later. That's a classic example of the units not talking to each other.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's criminal in my opinion. You can't get shit like that done.
I agree 100%.
Like if you came to if I had a bit like right now though, I'm in a podcasting recording studio, and if something goes wrong in here, I get electrocuted by this mic right now. Peter, our lovely producer, is going to be held accountable for it. But like in the military, if you or I are out on patrol and we shoot the wrong person, we might end up going to jail. But then you can run the whole show and fuck up one thing after another, and that there's never any comeback on you. It's like it's like the too big to fail kind of thing.
Yeah, the trouble is there's never enough Peters to go around. Because your Peter's pretty qualified and he gets the job done.
He's a legend. He is. We're lucky here. But it's one of those things. Like like I'm sure you're the same. You picked up that book, The Green Berets. You read. You're a writer. And the more that you read, the more you realize that these things just happen at every war. It's every war the same. That there's lessons get learned, lessons get forgotten. People come in, people think they know better. Same mistakes get made. Same lessons have to get learned. And again and again. And kind of on that subject, did you ever experience what like called blue on blue or friendly fire or whatever you guys termed it at the time? Did you ever come across that out there?
We did not. No. Other special forces units did. They had some very serious cases. Some of the Green Beret camps, the A camps, they would have the communists that would actually turn the indigenous people against the Green Berets in camp.
Oh, right.
Sometimes even during when they're under attack. So they had serious problems. Now, in my case, we were just lucky. Our Vietnamese were good. They were all vetted by our Vietnamese counterpart and by our interpreter. So by the time they were considered to be on a team, my little people had checked them out. So we never had to worry about that.
And you never came on the wrong end of American artillery or anything like that?
We had none. Remember, in Laos and Cambodia.
All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah, no artillery, no tanks, no nothing, man. It's just, but we had the best Air Force in the world and our gunships, our gun crews.
And you were you the guy calling in those gun runs and the faster?
Oh yeah.
So like, how close are we talking here? How close were you putting it? How close were you putting it down to you?
A lot of times we bring in as close as we could, and we had the napalm close enough where it took your oxygen.
Wow.
We had gun runs where with the helicopter gunships more than once, and even with an A1 Sky Raider once, where they made a gun run with the minigun, and the shell casings landed in the back of my collar. And then another time we had we used Spectre gunships, the C-130s.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, love them.
Called Spectres. You're familiar with those aircraft? Oh, we did too. This is 1970 now. So we're on the ground. We've been on the ground all night. We went through 3 or 4 Spectres. And on one occasion, the enemy was so close to us at night, I told him I wanted it 5 meters away.
Wow.
And he told me, so you gotta accept responsibility for any casualties I give you. And I was like, I'm trying to whisper in the middle of the night on top of a hill with the NVA crawling at us. So anyway, I gave him, I said, yeah, okay, I accept full responsibility. Now kill these mothers. And they brought it in. I mean, when we started out, the grass was in the daytime was like 3 to 4 feet tall. In the morning, it had all been chopped down to about 2 feet.
That's hard to get your head around, quite honestly. Like that kind of close, that the how close that was and how sustained it was as well. Because we're not talking about a 2-minute fight here.
Oh yeah,
but that you had that hour after hour.
They came at us all night on that one mission. Because the first time when the Spectre opened up, there was over 100 lights of people coming down the mountain towards us. And other lines of troops coming up the mountain towards us. In the valley, they were unloading trucks of troops. And you could just see it all. And Spectre just tore them up.
So they're just trying to make you run out of ammunition?
Oh, yeah. Well, in that case that's one of the cases we didn't run out of ammunition because they didn't know exactly where we were. So we used all the air assets.
Yeah.
We had minimal contact. And during the night, we used all of our hand grenades. Because in between gunships, when they left, the NVA would come really hard at us. They'd crawl. Because they weren't quite sure where we were. They're trying to find us, So we throw a hand grenade, and then they scurry, kill some. Sometimes you hear them dragging the bodies away. And then other times we're getting low, we throw a rock, and you hear them run away because they thought it was a hand grenade. So we played that game for a couple of hours, like, guess what I'm throwing now game.
Oh, Jesus Christ. When you're in these things, John, like, are you past the point where there's, like, are you in a different mental zone where you're kind of past fear and everything and you're just, like, in this almost like operating like a machine in these kind of long engagements? I've never been in an engagement that's anything like that, so I don't know. I know what it's like to be shot at. I know what it's like to be blown up. I don't know what it's like to be in an engagement like that. What's like? Where is your head? Like, what's going on in your head? Do you go past fear and to a point of just like almost numbness? Like, what happens in your head?
That's a good question. All the adrenaline flows, and you're so on top of your game that you're just trying to stay ahead of the enemy to figure out what they're doing, then coordinating the air assets, trying to figure out if there's a way that you can continue the mission somehow. But usually when we're in a firefight, we're compromised. So at that point, we're waiting on the helicopters to get there to pull us out. Then what air assets do we have? What do we have to use? Now, in your day, you got the A-10, where we had the A-1 Sky Raider. That was a single prop plane, but they could stay on station for several hours. They had CBU, napalm. Of course, in your war, you guys couldn't even use napalm. At least we had crispy critters once in a while, And they would use bombs, anything from 250, 500. If we really needed a bigger one, they could bring in 1,000-pounders. And so in answer to your question would be hyper vigilant to try to stay ahead of the enemy and to run the TAC air the best that we could, get ready for the extraction.
So one of my friends who's in Afghanistan with me is a big fan of yours. So knowing that we had you coming on today, I had messaged him earlier to say, like, ask him, did he have any questions? And his question really kind of ties into what you're saying. Like, that experience that you're going through right there, and like, there's so many other stories that you've had, and I'm not diving into all of them because I always say this is not the audiobook 2.0. People have got to go and buy the audiobook for those stories if they want to go and hear them. But, you're a young man, you're on a grassy knoll, not that grassy knoll, but you're on a grassy knoll. You've got
Yeah.
gunships. You've got gunships coming in. You've got waves of enemy soldiers. How do you go from that back to civilian life? Like that? How do you go from those extremes of like the high, those extremes of highs that most people can never even imagine? How do you transition to civilian life?
Well, in my case, I came back. We had several things. It was a summertime. My friends that from my church, we had our church softball team. I had some friends that I knew from college that we acquainted with. And of course, we had the family. My family was always there. And grandma, everybody was praying for all the time that I was in Vietnam. And you missed the adrenaline high. And for the first couple of years, I thought about going back. But then you could see all the reductions in force coming. And it's just like, well, I survived 19 months in SOG, so let's go on with life. And so I got involved with a school newspaper. I had like a new mission, which was get the classes made up. Then I worked with the school newspaper. And then we had a POW MIA concern center where we worked really hard to draw attention on the American POWs and the MIAs that were still missing in 71, 72. They came home in February of 73, but you still had the MIA issue, which is still an issue today that a lot of people just want to ignore.
What is that? Sorry, because I don't know. I'm not sure if in the UK we really understand what the MIA issue is. Could you like explain a bit? Sorry, because we it's not. I see the flags when I'm in America and stuff, but I don't think it's something that we really get over here.
Yeah. So like my earlier example of how I got my job, the way I got my job, a team was wiped out. So 2 Green Berets, Glenn Lane, Robert Owen, that are listed as, quote, missing in action, and they're in Laos. They went missing in action in Laos on one of our top secret missions. There are 2 of 50 Green Berets that disappeared that way. And then there's over 100 aviators who died supporting SOG missions. Everything from FAC, helicopter crews. We had a team that got pulled out on ropes, RT Intruder, where the team was getting pulled out. One of the Americans, his rope got caught, and he fell to the ground, was knocked unconscious. Moments later, the 2 other Americans were hanging from the ropes, and the helicopter pulling them up took severe enemy gunfire. The helicopter turned around and crashed, killing everybody. Killed the 2 Americans, the Green Berets, killed the 4 helicopter crew members. And a bright light went in the next day. They found all the bodies, put all the bodies in body bags, took them to the site where they planned in the morning to exfil them, take them back to base. In the morning, they almost got overrun by the NVA. They got hammered wave after wave. And so they had to leave the bodies behind because they had to live to get out just from the attacks from the NVA. So those 2 Americans, actually total 6 Americans, 2 Green Berets and the 4 aviators are still missing in action. And we've had one of our guys who ran that bright light has been back twice or 3 times now with the government trying to locate those body bags and those Americans. So the missing in action, in February and March and April of 1973, the men who were held as POWs in North and Hanoi were returned. But there was still over 1,000. Now, at that time, we'd be like maybe 1,900 Americans who were not accounted for.
I mean, that's a hell of a number.
So today that number is 1,586. That would be all the Americans from the Vietnam War, including Air America, that are still missing in action from Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, China. We lost a few in China, and of course Vietnam.
I mean, that number's just massive.
It is.
Like massive. So presumably when these guys are found, they're repatriated with honors to the United States. And I suppose it gives some element of closure to their families.
Yes, if there's any family members still alive 50 years later.
I imagine I know the answer to this, but is there enough getting done to find these people?
They're trying, and there's complicated scenarios. Of course, the virus is impacted. Everything's shut down. We have, with the federal government, there's the DPAA. It's the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. And there's some nonprofits that try to work with that agency. And then over time, because during the Vietnam War, Americans challenged the communists in North Vietnam on the POW, said, treat our people better. Any country had gone back to a country saying, take care of our prisoners, that they're Americans. And then the people who did that after the war ended continued with the mission to locate the missing in action. And that mission has been ongoing since. And then it started with just Vietnam vets. Then somewhere along the line, World War II vets said, hey, maybe you could help us do that. Sure. And then the Korean War vets came along and said, could you help us do that? So today what happens? The World War II and the Korean War veterans and their organizations tell Congress, give us more money because we have more POWs than the Vietnam War, even though our people helped them get started first.
Everything just becomes politicized, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Always comes down to politics and money when you boil this stuff down. Well, how do you feel? Because I've seen these flags, and I've seen these flags as I drive around America. Like quite often, you'll have the American flag, and below it, you'll have the black. Do you say power POW? Like, what's the correct way of saying it?
POW MIA, because prisoner of war, missing in action. Yes.
How do you feel when you see that combination of flags when you drive around your country?
I'm glad to see it, and they now have federal law that they can fly from any federal building now. And it's important to see it because I think of Glenn Lane and Robert Owen and other friends that we've lost, men that we've lost over the years that have not been able to be returned because their remains are in Southeast Asia. And the Southeast Asian soil is the most acidic soil in the world, where it's so bad that over 50, 60 years, it begins to eat up the bones. So we're fighting Mother Nature as well as the elements and just politics, just trying to get to it. Now, the Vietnamese government today is the most cooperative in our entire history, as well as the Laotians are cooperating more because for the longest time, nobody would cooperate because they had the old hostilities from the war. But there have been residual units and a nonprofit like this, the National League of POW MIA Families. They've been involved with this since day one. And today they're still involved, heavily involved. They know all the communist leaders in each country. They try to work with them, try to encourage our government to do more. And it's just an ongoing process.
Is that one of the hardest things to get move on from after war, because there's a lot of things that you see and a lot of things that impact you, but is knowing that those guys are still out there, is that like one of the hardest things to move past?
Oh, yeah. It just gnaws at your gut every day. You're just like, we're so lucky to be alive. And we think because we're alive, we knew that if the situation were reversed, if I was killed and they came home, that they would be out there advocating with the government.
Is that one of the reasons that you write?
Yes. I haven't done enough of it because time and money, like everything else, But we have I'm a member of the Special Operations Association and the Special Forces Association. We have a joint POW MIA committee, and we have an officer who's really good on it. He works hard at it, and we have a high visibility. He went back 2 years ago with the National League of POW MIA Families, and they met with the communists who were on the SOG hunter killer teams. They were trained strictly to find SOG teams and kill the Americans. And they met them in an effort to try to learn more about our MIAs. So those efforts are still going on.
So those guys, they were their own kind of hardcore, I imagine then. Like for you guys with the hardcore on the American side, were they the kind of like your opposite numbers?
Oh, yeah. they had a Kill American award. If they killed one of us, they got an award and a stipend from the government, and they'd be a national hero for the rest of their lives.
And how do you feel towards those kind of like those guys? Now, have you ever met anybody that was on the opposing side? As in, well, I know you've met a lot of them, but I mean, since it was your job to kill them.
No, not other than combat. No desire to do so.
What do you think about it when you see those kind of things where, like, they've had people after the Second World War, they had some things where they have Japanese people come to services and things like that. How do you feel about that kind of thing?
Well, I think it's good. I'm amazed at the men that do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they do it, because particularly, let's say you're one of those vets from the Bataan Death March.
Yeah.
The way they were brutalized by the Japanese, and they go back and somehow meet them. That's a testimony to their Christian faith, to be able to forgive somebody like that and to go back and talk to them. I don't know if I could do it. That's why so far I haven't had many offers. And if I had an offer, I don't know if I would take it or not.
You mentioned your faith there. Did your faith get stronger or weaker as a result of serving in Vietnam?
Oh, no, it got stronger. I'm convinced that the only reason why I'm alive today is because the Lord intervened, because it wasn't me. I'm convinced that there was a greater power, that all those prayers and everything helped, because there was good Green Berets that died in combat there. And here's Mrs. Meyer's little boy, Johnny. Somehow I lucked out and came home.
The no atheists in foxholes thing is definitely true. Because we're not very religious generally in the UK. We don't really have church and stuff so much as our part, but everybody became very religious when we got out on tour, and but it's being close to death brings you closer spiritually to. I'm not saying that it necessarily has to be God in one form or another, but I definitely think it makes you ask more, like you're saying, on the why did certain things happen certain ways, and why do they happen to certain, and you see kids suffering, and you see kids coming through suffering and smiling. It makes you ask a lot of questions. I think. Talking of questions, I've got another one from my mate James, because he'll kill me if we don't ask you these. I'm just going to read this one verbatim. So he said the main components of soldiering are quite often broken down into shoot, move, communicate. Which do you think is the most important out of those aspects of shoot, move, and communicate?
Well, if you're not a good shot, you're not going to move, and you're not going to communicate. So shoot, you hope to avoid that. We always wanted just to do our mission, a 5-day mission, take pictures, call in reports, and go home. But we always left under fire. There's only one time out of dozens of missions where we left and we weren't under enemy gunfire. The only question was, how much would there be?
Right. So, like, when you were training then, and maybe this is something like you've done after the military as well. Like, what was the favorite part of training for you? Was it physical side, or the shooting, or the comms? Like, what really kind of like spoke to you?
Well, we always enjoyed the live fire part, because you're playing with boy toys, So working with the contingency drills, practicing the wiretaps, things like that.
But author to author speaking now as well, because I always enjoy having the opportunity to speak to other authors, because I don't really know any, to be honest, except for the ones we have on the podcast. You mentioned a little bit about why you got into writing. Do you want to expand a bit more about how the books came about in the first place, and like the kind of driving motivation behind it?
Well, yeah. At the time when I worked on my first book, Across the Fence, it was about 20 years ago. And my wife at the time, when I married her, she had 2 boys, had 2 girls. We went for a tiebreaker, who was a girl. And so I talked about doing a book. And so we had 4 teenagers and a young girl in the house, our baby. And she goes, "You got to write this book. Do it now." And I couldn't have done it without my wife. It was her inspiration that got me started. Other friends had wanted me to do it. So I began interviewing people, put together their first book, because, your kids don't give a hoot about that when they're young. They're busy growing up. So eventually, over time, some of my girls were curious. Just so if I got run over by a school bus somewhere, that the girls and the boys would have those books to say, well, this is what I did in the war. And then I did the second book because there's a lot of stories we missed. We did the third book. And as soon as I moved to Tennessee at the end of the month, I'm going to be working on the fourth and fifth book. And the models will be right till we die because there's so many SOG stories that have never been told.
And they're just insane as well. These stories are just, they're nuts. Like I said, they're Tom Clancy level stuff. And I can't get my head around just how many there are. But then when you look at the scale of the war and the guys that were out there and what you were up against, you're like, well, I guess it makes sense that this, like, you know, that this stuff is happening. But it almost feels like you have to remind yourself, and that's why I'm so glad that there's podcasts with yourself that I've been able to listen to, and I know like other people can listen to this, because you have to remind yourself, it's like, this isn't fiction. This is fucking reality, and it was reality not that long ago.
Yeah,
it's absolutely kind of mind-boggling. How do you feel during the process of writing a book? Is it is because, like, you know, from what you were saying there's like a lot of it is kind of like a duty. Do you feel better for having writing them, or does it, because I know with some people when you're writing about these things, it can actually put you into a bit of a, you know, it puts you into the dark place for a bit. Like how is that for you?
Oh no, it's all good. I mean, when I finally get into the groove, really actually writing, get the research done, have things together, it's for me, it's I like it. Like you said, more of I feel a duty to the guys who didn't make it, and even to the guys who came home that went back. There's so many of our guys. You hear about the one or two Vietnam vets that go off or have a problem somewhere, but out of 3.2 million veterans that came home, a lot of them came back to life and made the adjustments, just like our predecessors from World War II to Korean War, World War One, like your Brits have. They go off and fight and they come home.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, I know that that's my mission, because I feel there's so many SOG stories out there, from the bravery of the Green Berets, the little people, our aviators, the South Vietnamese King Bee pilots. They're all just great stories that if you read one now that's in the books, there's more like that, and some are even more incredible. I mean, my stuff, we had some close calls, but there are people whose stories are even hairier than mine, and there's a lot of them. And that's my goal, is to capture them and get them down.
And that's just bonkers to know that, like, to you, I mean, your stories are nuts, and then to know that there's another, like, if you know you're saying that these guys have got other stories, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, what, you know, it's nuts, but like they all deserve to be told and they all deserve to be remembered. And I'm sure, like, what always kind of blows my mind about this stuff is, I'm sure you're the same. Sometimes I've got books back home which were memoirs by guys that fought under Napoleon, or you know, there's the Peloponnesian Wars out there. There's accounts from Roman officers. You know, the truth is, in 500 years' time, somebody's going to be reading across the fence. Some soldier if we're still around, some soldier in 500 years' time is going to be reading across the fence. I think that's amazing, and like hopefully they'll learn something. You know, they'll learn something that will hopefully save their life. You mentioned parenthood, John, and you mentioned also, you mentioned your kids, and you mentioned, you know, like you said, millions of guys came home, millions of guys made the adjustment. Do you think your service has made you a better parent?
Oh yeah, I think that because of being in special forces, the people we serve with, there's some people I really respect that are still alive today. They're like my senior NCOs, and from them and learn the things about life's lessons and priorities. Family first, always. And what you do for the family, try to raise them so that they have a view of the world that they appreciate being alive, and then try to do something to improve other people's lives, or to help people, or to do something along those lines, you know, and or just to raise them so that they appreciate what we have in America. Particularly like now, you look at this so much attack against America. We're not perfect, and I never say that we are a perfect nation, but we're better than anything out there, in my humble opinion.
You know, what's kind of crazy to me is like the attack against America seems to be coming from America. Most people I know have a pretty good opinion of America. Like, don't get me wrong, like you say, it has faults.
Yeah.
But I never thought we get to a point where America is turning in on itself so much.
Well,
It's
after November 4th, when the elections passed, a lot of this that's coming in, there are organizations like the Antifa people.
mm-hmm.
They're Marxists, and they've been for years behind the scenes attacking our country quietly, and now they've just surfaced much more radically. And there's big factions that are putting money into these organizations. These are not the people in the city. I mean, almost every city that's had a riot, the riot wasn't started by the locals. The locals might be protesting for whatever reason, but they show up to protest peacefully. But these professional terrorists, I'm going to call them terrorists, that come in, that burn down stores. We had one here in San Diego County. We had one in a little town called La Mesa. And the mayor went on the radio the next day and said, our people had a protest, but it was peaceful. The outsiders came in and triggered the violence. They attacked City Hall. They attacked the police.
Mm-hmm.
They even burnt down a bank and a museum. And they hit a grocery store. I mean, what kind of stupidity is that? And the families, even the black, well, not all, but majority of the black families that have suffered the loss of a family member come out and say, do not destroy buildings in our city because of my relative. They're saying, yeah, let's improve our system. Let's get things better. Just improve the police training so we don't have wrongful deaths. Let's do that, but don't destroy the cities in the process. So therefore, what's going on is organized. There's big money behind it, and it's going to be interesting to see how things turn out.
I mean, you fought against communism, you fought against you, and you've seen like the worst sides of it, which is obviously people like, hey, you don't want to play along with us? Fine, we'll kill your family. These like that's communism.
Yeah.
It must be both frustrating and also kind of worrying to see it. I don't think that it's as prevalent as the media is trying to make it out, but the fact is that it's still an issue, and it must be very frustrating to kind of see that.
Well, it is, and don't forget, I'm an ink-stained wretch. I worked at newspapers for a while, and when you see like today's media, how they only report the violence, and they always say peaceful protest. You have a CNN reporter stand there with a microphone in his hand. There's buildings burning behind. This is a peaceful protest. That idiot should be fired. What the hell are you talking about? And then the media, majority media, keeps talking about the right-wing fascists. Well, they're not behind this. The right-wing people that show up, or the conservatives show up, are just trying to protect the property. There's a lot of other activity that's come along with these Antifa people. Man, I just don't like it. And the media's not giving us an accurate portrayal of it. Majority of them are not.
Yeah, like the media it's so skewed. It's almost like it'd be laughable if it wasn't so serious.
I agree.
But like it's kind of like it's nuts that it's protecting your property now makes you some right-wing lunatic. Yeah. It's like, hey, I'm turning up with my weapons to protect my property. Look at this. White. Like, if you're white and you're trying to protect your property now, then you must be a white supremacist. Like, no, I just don't want my fucking shop burned down.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's kind of nuts. Where do you see America going in the next 6 months?
Well, lots going to depend on the election. Joe Biden finally just came out and at least criticized some of the violence. They went through the whole Democratic convention without even talking about it. Like, how do you do that? How do you have... Anyways, they have. And at some point, I just hope that the rational people, there's enough people that vote to keep people in that appreciate America, that don't attack it 24/7 every day.
I think the Biden thing is because they realize that most people in America are against all this shit that's going on, and that they've now had to swing their policy to try and win those people back. Because most people want to live. Most people are good people. Do you think? Well, do you think that? Do you think most people are good people?
Absolutely. I mean, no matter where you go, I've had, when it's gone through Special Forces training, we had some Russians that were there with us who had left Russia and hated to see what was going on with communism, but came to America to get away from it. And we used to talk politics all the time. And we all came to the conclusion that once you got rid of all the politicians and the lawyers, the people could get along. Whether it's a Russian or a Czechoslovakian, get rid of all this political bullshit. And the people will chum up and get together, because that's why I enjoyed my team. I knew my Vietnamese, and I really enjoyed their company. I mean, as individuals, we got to know each other. And of course, being in combat together, life and death, time after time, you have a bond that you don't have with your family.
I just want to say thanks so much for today, John. I really appreciate it. Like, you give a lot of time up for putting the word out about these operations that you were involved in, and I just think it's. I really want to just say thank you for that. Not only for coming on to this podcast today, but just in general for the work that you've been doing. And I'll make sure everyone knows where to find you. I'll link all that up in an outro that I'll record separately. But I just wanted to say thank you again and ask you if you have any parting words for the listeners.
Well, yeah, I want to thank you for the opportunity, because once you told me you had seen the elephant yourself, that's why I said, okay, I'll be glad to do it. And again, I couldn't have done the books without my wife. And Jocko has had a major impact on our life by helping us get the stories out to a new audience that we ordinarily wouldn't have seen. And after we moved to Tennessee, one of the things we'll be looking at is how to use social media to try to get the stories out, honest stories about our Green Berets as well as our allies and the heroic pilots that saved our bacon time after time after time. Have you ever heard of a song called God's Own Lunatics?
I have not.
Joe Galloway was the reporter for a newspaper. He was with the first cav in the Ia Drang Valley. And he wrote the book, We Were Soldiers Once, We Were Young. That was the movie with Mel Gibson.
Okay.
And he went to a reunion where he talked about the helicopter pilots, and he called them God's Own Lunatics. If you Google that, his speech, it comes up. It's only 2.5 minutes. But it basically says, we ground pounders so love and appreciate the helicopter pilots because they came when we called. They might bring you resupplies. They may bring in new men, or they may pick you up and take you home, or pick up your dead comrades. And they talked about how they would hover in those thin plastic helicopters. And then at the end, he says, all those that were killed, if they were alive today, they would tell you to live life to the fullest. So we'll close on that note.
Well, holy fucking shit, guys. That is one of the most incredible podcasts that we've done on this. I don't think there's many blokes on the planet who have more combat experience than John. That was absolutely mental. John, thanks so much for coming on, mate. Can't wait to do part 2. That was just so much fun, guys. I want to say thank you again for you guys for listening. Thank you for the support with my own books. And also thank you for supporting the podcast. You guys are making posts, sharing posts, bringing mates along to the podcast. We obviously don't charge a fee for listening to the podcast. The podcast is free to listen to. But what we would ask of you is if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell a friend or make a post. Leave a review. All these things help to bring in more guests. They help to spread the word. There's obviously a lot of stuff. Sometimes we just, we have a laugh on here. Sometimes we just talk a few war stories. But I think we all agree that there's a lot of stuff on here as well that could help a veteran in need. So if you help us to spread the podcast, you never know who it might help. And I promise you guys from the DMs, you would be surprised how many messages we get from people that it's helped them through a hard time. So please help us spread the word on the podcast. Thank you so much to the Royal British Legion for making it possible. Thank you, Combat Comb Over. Thank you, me, Geraint Jones. And if you want to go and look up anything that I've mentioned in the podcast, guys, there's links to John, there's links to Combat Comb Over, there's links to the Royal British Legion. Everything is down in the show notes. Please go and support the people that support the podcast. Without the guests, obviously, there's no podcast. Without a sponsor, obviously, there's no podcast. So please, let's keep it going and support each other. All right, guys, thank you so much. I'll catch you next time. Love you, bye.
Yeah. Listen. Shout out Teaser. You told me not to worry, and you wouldn't break my heart. You told me you were sorry, yeah, my whole world fell apart. You said it's not my fault, and yeah, I've never done you wrong. I'm grinding to a halt, now I can see you're moving on. I promised I'd get better, and I told you things would change. You keep me to the gutter, yeah, I'll never be the same. I've gotta let you go, now live your life and spread your wings. And yeah, you put on quite a show and pulled the puppet strings. And are you sure that you don't want me? Remember all the pain, or maybe you should thank me. It's your loss and my gain. I'm leaving now forever, I won't hang my head in shame. But yeah, you've taken me for granted, and you should feel ashamed. You sold a dream to all of us, a dream that we'd all die for, a reason for us all to live and something we could fight for. I might just help a man up to his feet or hold a newborn, but no matter what I do, my hands remembering my rifle, yeah.
Life's hard, I know that, still wouldn't change shit. I wouldn't go back, yeah, I wouldn't go back. Feelings I hold back, memories fade, yeah, they go fast, yeah, they go fast. Good times to come and go, survive the highs and lows, just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose. Good times to come and go, survive the highs and lows, just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose.